I'm Julianna Forlano here with Dr. Richard Wolff, Professor of Economics Emeritus at UMass Amherst. You taught at Yale, you taught at the Sorbonne, you taught at City College. Could you please tell us what the sequester is?
Sequester is a strange term for a very simple idea. Back in 2011, the Republicans and the Democrats couldn't decide how to solve the problem they agreed on. And the problem they agreed on was that the United States has a deficit. It borrows too much money, it's accumulated too much debt, and so now they have to do something about the debt. If you believe that that is the major problem, which I don't, but they did, then you've got to either raise taxes, because then the government doesn't have to borrow so much, or cut spending, because then the government doesn't have to borrow so much, or maybe both. The problem was the Republicans and the Democrats couldn't agree. The Republicans are excited about cutting spending. They want to take money away from students and old people and everybody else. The Democrats share much of it, but they want to at least do something for the average person because they get more of those kinds of votes. Republicans wanted cuts, the Democrats wanted cuts, but some increase of taxes, and maybe even some increase of taxes, heaven forbid, on rich people. They couldn't agree, so they kicked the can down the road. They decided, okay, we're going to give ourselves a deadline. If we don't come up by something by the end of 2012, a year later, automatically taxes will go up and automatically government spending will go down in order to solve the government debt problem. Basically, that's the sequester, the kind of notion of automatic rather than working things out. Let me explain the absurdity of this. We have an economic crisis. We have millions and millions of people out of work. We have millions of people being foreclosed out of their homes. We have a crisis that everybody who isn't blind and deaf and dumb knows is everywhere. If you raise taxes on people in the middle of a situation like that, you make the problem worse because people have less money in their pocket because they have to pay more taxes, which means they can buy fewer goods and services, which means fewer jobs for people producing the goods and services that they can't buy anymore. This is not rocket science. Right? And if at the same time that you raise taxes, you cut government spending, you're hitting the economy with a double whammy. If you don't spend money as the government, you're depriving companies of business. That the government is the largest buyer of everything in the United States. So if the government cuts back, all kinds of businesses are going to have no one to sell to, or at least many fewer. And so they're now going to have fewer sales and fewer need for people, and you're going to worsen unemployment. So the combination of what the sequester was supposed to do, an automatic event, raising taxes and cutting spending, would be a horrible thing to do in the middle of an economic crisis. And the only reason it even came up was because of the determination of big business in the United States and wealthy people to substitute for the economic crisis that is the problem for most people a completely different issue, the debt, as if it were the issue. But for them it is, because the debt is a serious problem. It's not one that we can magically make go away.
You said they made up that it was a problem.
Right.
You said that they agreed
that
it was a problem.
Someone's
agreed that it's a problem.
Right.
So they're saying this is a problem.
Right. There's lots of ways of stimulating an economy. One of the ways is top down. That's what we did in this country. We bailed out the big banks. We saved General Motors by giving them a ton of money, the AIG insurance company. We entered this crisis as a nation with the first order of business, help those at the top. The old idea used to be called trickle-down economics. You help those at the top and it trickles down. Yeah. And usually what happens is it never trickles. And the alternative might be called trickle up. You help people at the bottom and say, if I give people lots of jobs, if I give people a raise in their income, they can spend money, which will make money for business, and so it'll trickle up the stream. That's as perfectly reasonable a way to go as
or even a balanced approach.
Or even a balanced approach. We didn't have that. We had an approach in which, in the crucial year, 2008 and 9, of the worst of this crisis, what we had was a commitment, all-out commitment, to raise all the money the government needed, borrow huge amounts to bail out the top. And we've been waiting ever since. We're now in the 6th year of this crisis. The trickle down failed. It's a stone-cold failure. So you ought to respond by saying, okay, let's try bottom up. I mean, where else are we going to go?
Hello.
But they won't. They follow up the trickle down by saying, oh my God, now the government had borrowed all that money to bail out the top. We have to make sure the government can pay it back.
So they're going to cut services.
They're going to raise taxes on people, for example.
All people, not just the 1%.
All people, that's right.
Yeah.
That was, if I may say so, that was a hustle perpetrated by Mr. Obama and his administration.
Oh.
At the end of the year, because the sequester was coming at the end of 2012, this sudden raise of taxes and cut of spending, the Congress decided, oh my God, that would be terrible, just as they are now saying it'll be terrible if on March 1st the sequester hits again. So what they did is they took half the can, if I might say so. They dealt with the tax part and postponed until March 1st of this year the spending part. So at the end of the year, they avoided what was then called, with great hoopla and hyperbole, the fiscal cliff.
Yes, the cliff.
We avoided going over this cliff, whatever that meant. Certainly, as an economist, it meant nothing to me. So what we did is we raised taxes. We did the first part of this program. The hoopla was about raising taxes on rich people, which
Right.
Obama said he was doing. Let's look at the truth of it. Wealthy people in America, the top income tax rate they paid before the deal that Obama and the Republicans agreed to was 35%.
Right.
For every dollar over the top bracket, at $100 or so $1,000, for every dollar you earn above that, you have to give 35 cents to Uncle Sam, you keep 65 cents. This was raised, the tax on rich people, but only for those earning over $450,000. So only those people, a tiny percentage of the American people, they had to pay more. And how much more did they have to pay? From 35% to 39.6%. Don't cry. This is trivial. This doesn't affect any wealthy person in any significant way at all. Hidden behind all the hoopla of taxing the rich was the really big tax increase that went into effect. And that was raising the payroll tax, the money that is withheld from every person's check. About 150 million Americans get such checks every week. They had withheld before, through 2012, 4.2%. That went up to 6.2% as of January 1, 2013.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question here. Why aren't people completely outraged about this?
Why aren't people outraged at everything that's going on, since it's all of a piece? But here we have noise in the media about taxing the rich. We have liberal type folks saying, yeah, we're taxing the rich, and conservatives saying you should never be taxing. We didn't tax them a significant amount of money. What we really did was whack the average American person, the wage earner who gets 20 grand a year. Or
Well,
30
they were
grand
distracted.
That's right.
thinking
They were
about
all
a fiscal cliff.
Right, and
Yeah.
it's a little bit like we got to worry about the debt. No, we have to worry about millions of people who are unemployed, becoming discouraged about work, losing their families, losing their health. All the things we know come from unemployment, especially when it lasts a long time. None of this is being dealt with in an adequate way. March 1st, 2013 is the deadline they gave themselves to come up with spending cuts. So the Republicans say, okay, we did the tax increases before, smugly confident that what they got was a minuscule increase for wealthy people and a whopping increase for average people, which after all is the Republican program.
Isn't that
They got
interesting?
it. They got it. So now they're saying, okay, now we have to cut spending. And the Democrats go, no, we can cut spending, but not as much as you want, and we have to raise taxes some more somewhere else. And you're
Got
right.
it.
You're right to ask the question, what in the world will it take for the average American people to finally stand up and say, this is outrageous, this is enough, this is way beyond enough, and ought to be changed? If they go through with the sequester, all the spending cuts that they had written in originally start to take effect. Now, there's two things to keep in mind. One, the word start to take effect. Because what that means is it's actually stretched out over a long period of time, multiple years. So no one knows exactly how fast. So the deadline isn't real, because if they say, well, it'll take us a few weeks to begin to do it, they have time, which they know, to work out a deal. So they'll go through the theater of the sequester on March 1st, like they went through the theater of the fiscal crunch. Everybody will.
And the debt ceiling before that.
Yes, and everyone will make their grandstand TV appearances, and then they're going to have to work out some sort of deal. The second thing to understand is that it's an across the board. So in a sense, every agency of the government is affected, has to cut its spending, but that gives enormous latitude. Let me give you an example. If you're the Civil Aviation Administration in this country, you could do something which was hinted by President Obama a couple days ago. You could make a decision, okay, the cuts begin over here, and that will slow down every plane trip in the United States. It'll make planes late, or
Right.
okay, what does that do? That makes all business travelers who are in the 1% inconvenienced. It's a way of squeezing to get them to put pressure on Republicans to cut a deal.
Right.
The Republicans are coming back saying that's a manipulation, as if they don't do the same. And so they're talking about, my God, you'll stop paying troops who are fighting in Afghanistan their salary or something, or you won't provide them with enough bullets or enough bandages or whatever it is they need, and so you'll compromise, scare stories to try to manipulate public opinion.
Isn't all of this sort of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic?
Yeah, I think it's an economy that is in serious trouble. The important thing to understand is that this crisis begins in December of 2007. That means we're in the 6th year. That's very unusual for crises to last this long. Capitalism is a very unstable system and always has been, but typically its ups and downs, while devastating to the people affected, are shorter. This one is doubly devastating because it lingers, and because neither Republicans nor Democrats even have the courage to take the kinds of steps that, for example, Roosevelt took the last time our economy collapsed.
What kind of steps do you think would be helpful? Do you see President Obama potentially doing anything that's going to be of note?
No. No, I think that he's shown us that he may be better than Republicans, and a lot of people will vote for him because he's better than Republicans. But no, the kinds of changes we need, and I'll answer your question, have to come from below. That's how they came the last time, and that's how they'll come.